Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. In today's episode, we talk to a legend from the University of Texas School of Law. If you went to UT Law between 1984 and 2006, you know her name, and you probably got a sunflower from her. If you were an Aggie at UT Law, she probably harassed you about why you wear so much maroon. Susana Alemán was the first female and first Hispanic dean to serve at UT Law. As the Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, she counseled thousands of students and organized events like Parents' Day and the Sunflower Ceremony. She was born in Edinburgh and raised in Falfurrias, Texas. She received her bachelor's degree, her master's in education, and her law degree all from the University of Texas. Dean Alemán loves students so much that she has 2 different scholarships. In 2012, she endowed the Alemán Wilson Challenge Grant Scholarship for Mexican-American students from South Texas who are enrolled in the UT College of Education. She also endowed the Dean Alemán Sunflower Lawhorn Scholarship for Mexican-American law students attending UT Law. She's obsessed with sunflowers, burnt orange, and longhorns. Please help me welcome Dean Susana Alemán. Thank you for being with us here today, Dean.
Thank you, Amanda. It's my pleasure.
I want to start off by asking, why did you want to be a lawyer?
Well, I must admit that initially I wanted to be a doctor. Since I was 4 years old, up until my sophomore year in high school, when I took biology, I had wanted to be a doctor, and then I changed my mind. I don't think it was so much a subject matter, but I was enjoying high school so much, especially all the student activities. And I thought I would prefer to be a teacher. My mom was an elementary school teacher for almost 40 years, so being an educator was in my blood. I didn't have any lawyer role models, and that may have played a significant part of why I was hesitant about going to law school. I was influenced greatly by TV shows. We had very few channels back then. I'm sure there are a lot more TV series now, but especially Judd for the Defense, Owen Marshall, and still Perry Mason. Okay? LA Law came much, much later. But seeing those TV shows, and the lawyer was always for the right person, for the good people always won. And, to me, that made a difference. And I said, wow, this person is really contributing to and helping society. And I said, that would be good to be one of those. I'm a dreamer. Don Quixote is my hero. The impossible dream is possible. And if it's not, shoot for the stars. You may not hit them, but you can at least hit the ceiling. That's been my philosophy. And seeing those TV shows, it was probably a rather naive view because the good person or the right person doesn't always win. And the lawyer can't always fight the enemy. The process could be a lot slower than what TV projected. But my view is take small steps and don't give up. Just keep plodding along, and hopefully the good side will win at the very end. So anyway, came to undergrad, and I knew I wanted to teach, but I didn't want to teach for a very long time because I always liked administration and school administration, and got all my certifications for mid-management principal and superintendent. But I always had in the back of my mind, I wanted a doctorate degree. And I had spoken to a professor when I was an undergrad, and I told her, at some point I'm going to have to make a choice between a PhD in higher ed or in administration or a law degree. And she said, if you really want to go into administration and you want to have the opportunity to practice, go to law school, get the law degree because you can do both. She said, if you get the PhD, you won't be able to practice law. Very wise advice. So always seek out mentors and counselors, advisors, people who can give you advice. People who are old like me and I'm addressing the students now, give you advice as to what to do. Okay, so law school is the only application I filled out, and yes, Amanda, the University of Texas School of Law or the University of Texas at Austin is the only school I applied to.
Well, and you had a famous classmate while you were at law school, and the way he described this is one day you were classmates, and the next day you were the dean. And so that quote comes from former Congressman Pete Gallego, who is now on a board that I am a part of, on the Texas CASA board. And so he was fascinated that you went from being his peer to being the dean. So can you talk to us about how did that happen, that your first job ends up being assistant dean of the UT Law School?
Congressman Gallego, excellent legislator, both at the national level and the state level, just excellent person. Yes, I wasn't sure I wanted to practice, but if I did, it was going to be school or education law. And my third year law school, I was clerking at the Texas Education Agency in the Hearings and Appeals Division. I must say that I would have been on the school district side. I should point out that I worked for 6.5 years before coming to law school. So I was not straight out of undergraduate school. I was not 22 years old. As a matter of fact, I had just turned 27. Okay. So I had 6.5 years of work experience under my belt. My third year, when it's time to start looking for a job, well, I guess I was the exception. Most classmates started looking for a job their first year. I didn't. I had seen a posting that University of Michigan was looking for an assistant dean. And I spoke to one of my professors, Mark Udoff, had been my constitutional law professor and my education law professor. And he was an associate dean at the time. And I asked him, because he had visited at Michigan the year before, what that law school was like. And he said, well, yeah, and he gave me some information on Michigan. And he said, but we're going to have an opening here at UT. And he was like, what? My predecessor, T.J. Gibson, who'd been there over 20 years, he said, he's retiring next summer and we'll soon be posting the position. Be on the lookout for it, So the deadline was, I believe, sometime in December, and I applied. I believe there were over 200 applicants, and the whole spring semester 1984, they were screening the applicants. The law school, the university, was also undergoing a dean search because Dean John Sutton, who was dean while I was in law school, was stepping down as dean and going back to full-time teaching. Well, Mark Udoff, of course, was one of the top candidates for that position, for the deanship, and they did not select a dean until a couple of days after graduation. And they were waiting for the new dean to be selected so that he could appoint the new assistant dean. As it turns out, he appointed 2 assistant deans. Anyway, so the week after graduation, the 5 finalists were interviewed. And of course, I thought I had done horribly. And within a few days, I had a call and was offered the job. Of course, I took it. It was really a situation of being at the right place at the right time. It was fortuitous that my predecessor, TJ, was retiring when I was graduating. And if I had been 25 years old, straight out of undergraduate with no work experience, I don't think I would have got the job. So for me, it paid off having worked before coming to law school. And yes, it was, and if I had not gotten the job, I had planned to stay at TEA and practice school law.
So in 1984, you become the first female and the first Hispanic dean that UT Law School ever had. That seems like it would be pretty momentous. How was that celebrated?
Well, I got the usual flood of congratulatory notes, calls, messages. Other than that, I don't really remember much celebration. I do remember being um, super happy, but at the same time, knowing that I had a big responsibility, not just the job, but being the first Hispanic and the first woman. If I failed, I was scared that I would make all women and all Hispanics look bad, and they would say, I wouldn't, how long would it be before they took a chance on someone else? Um, for me, it was just important to do a good job, do my best, and that's what I tried to do. And I know that uh, the most difficult part was that I was told you have to enforce the rules. Previous years, things had been rather lax, and of course, everyone loved TJ. He was a good person. But at the same time, whatever request the student had, it was granted. So all of a sudden, we get a dean who says, enforce the rules. So I had to be the bad guy. That didn't go over too well, especially with students who were second and third years because they had been used to a different system of rules. But I'm sorry that it took till 1984 to hire the first woman, the first Hispanic. At that time, we had only one Hispanic law professor, and he was a visiting professor. As a student in second and third years, I was on the faculty appointments committee. I don't know if they still do it now, but these faculty committees used to have 3 student members, so they got a student viewpoint. And so proud and happy that I was on that faculty appointments committee when it was Professor Roberto Soto, who was made a tenure track offer, an appointment. So it took a long time, but it's much better now.
Well, and I think you might see yourself as you were the dean that had to enforce the rules. My perspective is that you were the most gracious and most welcoming faculty member, staff member that we had at the law school, and you served for 21 years. You served under watching 10,000 students graduate. So do you have any memories of anything that happened? Any of your favorite students? Any stories that you'd like to share in that 21 years time?
Present company excluded, right?
I mean, you could include me, but you don't have to.
You were an excellent student, Amanda. I always enjoyed our visits. I'm glad you said memorable students and not necessarily favorite students, because it's like you ask a parent, which of your children is your favorite? Well, parents don't have a favorite, right? I mean, it's you love them all the same. And in order to be fair and consistent, I really couldn't play favorites. But I certainly enjoyed when students would come in. If a student would come in and say, I just want to let you know I got engaged, my response always was, to a law student, a lawyer, or a real person. Or they'd come back and say some special event in the family. Of course, loved it when students would come by and we'd talk sports, any sport, as long as it was burnt orange, right? Some of the students, well, there was one student who's a local elected official now. I'll try not to mention names. She was taking an ethics class in the LBJ School of Public Affairs with Professor Barbara Jordan. And after every ethics class, she had to come to the office and tell me, well, today, BJ, and they would call her BJ, Barbara Jordan, Professor Jordan, this is what she talked about, this is what she did, and she asked us this, and I mean, this student was just so enlightened with Professor Jordan, and I just felt like I was sometimes in the class living through her, and it was just, I mean, that was memorable. When the student would come in and just tell me any event in their life, or it was sad when they would come in and those who were married or anyone having a relationship problem, having to counsel that, some of that was sad. Or when we get a call and they say, well, could you please notify a student that his father has died or his mother has died. Those were tough moments, and you had just a place in your heart for those students. Cannot deny that one of my favorite groups was Assault and Flattery. Those students, first of all, the UT Law students are just super brilliant and have been forever and ever. But those in Assault and Flattery, just the talent they have. You'd see them on stage and you'd say, why are you in law school? Go be a star on this Broadway stage or singing somewhere, but no, can you imagine being represented, having a lawyer who could sing opera or the barbershop quartet, those groups that the acting also and the constructing the sets and all, it was just, I loved it. I wish I had been involved in it when I was a student. I don't know, my grades probably would have suffered. These students, they could miss classes for quite a few days, maybe weeks.
Well, for those that don't know and that didn't catch up from context clues, Assault and Flattery is the law school musical. And that was turned into the grown-up lawyer musical that Austin has. Actually, I've learned all of the major metro bars have that. And so you have some lawyers that aren't just book nerds. They also have a lot of talent for singing and dancing and acting.
One incident that I just it tells you the experience. This student had just won the national competition. She was and I don't remember now if it was moot court or mock trial, but national champion. The day before her Wills exam, the bookstore, or a bookstore, was across the street. And I went across the street to go buy probably another burnt orange Longhorn t-shirt, Amanda. And she was in line. I was right behind her. She was right in front of me. And she just kind of looked, and she didn't want me to see what she was buying. And it was, I guess, the equivalent of the Cliff Notes for law school students. And it was a book on wills. And she looks at me, and I just looked at her. I said, I don't care. You're a national champ. I'm sure you'll do well. And all she wanted to do was pass the course, and she did. Some of the students who are very memorable are those who are the first in their family to go to law school. When they come in and tell you, or we'd have the form, of course, everything I think is electronic now, but back then we had paper, and how many guests they plan to have at graduation at our sunflower ceremony. And, you'd see, especially minority students, it could be 50, 75, or 20, all students of all ethnicities had lots of guests, had their loved ones there, But there was a certain amount of extra pride for those first generation. And what I see, because even some of my law school classmates have children who have already graduated from law school. So I always say every generation gets better. And we're seeing that. So it's, I don't know, such pride in seeing our graduates be successful, whether it be in the courtroom, whether it be with their family, whether it be in the community, get elected to some local, state, national office, the contributions they make to society and organizations. It's just, that's what brings me a lot of pride.
So since you mentioned the sunflower ceremony, can you please describe what this is? This is what you were most well known for. So if you did not have the opportunity to go to UT Law School, what is the sunflower ceremony?
When the university was first founded, 1883, there were, I believe, only 4 departments. Law was one of them. Engineering was another one. And there was a deep rivalry between the engineers and the lawyers, okay? And I would assume the others were the sciences and perhaps literature. But graduations had been held for just a few years. And the university president decided that the graduates needed to wear academic regalia, cap and gown. Well, they decided that the seniors should have a voice or in selecting what the cap and gown should look like. How they did this or why they did it, I don't know, but I'm beginning to think perhaps the president was an engineer. But they invited a senior from every department except the law school. So those who met selected the regalia, and the law students, law graduates said, we had no voice in selecting the cap and gown. We're not going to wear them. University president said, fine. No regalia, you don't participate in graduation. So, of course, there had to be a compromise. So the university president said, okay, law graduates, you can participate in the ceremony, but you have to wear some kind of academic regalia and you have to select it. I think that they walked out of the president's office, they went outside, and the ceremonies back then were in June. Okay? And they went out, and the first thing they saw was a wild sunflower. And they picked that, but of course, remember, these are UT law graduates, about to be law graduates, right? And they said, we can justify this. The sunflower exists worldwide, just like the legal profession. And the sunflower turns its face towards the sun, just like the lawyer turns his or her face to justice. Beautiful, right? And for a dreamer, my gosh, that makes so much sense. Now, the tradition was that, and T.J. Gibson, my predecessor, he would go, there was even a picture in the yearbook once where he was carrying a bucket full of sunflowers. He would go out and pick them. Now, in 1984, now you see sunflowers in floral arrangements all over the place and bouquets everywhere, right? That wasn't around in 1984. Okay, you couldn't buy them at a flower shop. So, and I remember when I was hired, or right after I was hired, Dean Udoff said, "You are going to continue the tradition of picking the sunflowers." Yes, sir. I wanted the job, right? I didn't want to be fired right away. So that was a real challenge and some wild experiences in picking the sunflowers. And initially we had a sunflower ceremony for the December graduates and then another one for the May graduates. Because remember, initially the ceremony was in June. You can find sunflowers in June all over the place. Try finding them in mid-May. Try finding them after Thanksgiving. That first class, and bless his heart, TJ had plastic sunflowers because sometimes you just can't find them. He used plastic sunflowers. I had told one of the December graduates that if I cannot find real sunflowers, I will use silk sunflowers. Anyway, those December grads wanted to have a graduation party, and rightfully so. And they said, we're going to have a meeting. Okay, will you come to our meeting? Sure. So I go to the classroom, and they had already written on the chalkboard, artificial sunflower equals artificial education. Oh my goodness, pressure was on. I had to find, and I found some in like 3 different locations here in Austin. And one of them was by a creek down by Cameron Road and, oh gosh, what's that street? Broadmoor Street. But finding the locations for the first May, I was asking students, and any student would come by, especially at third year, if they had seen sunflowers anywhere. Well, in May, really the beginning of May, they're not blooming yet. But one student came by and said, oh yes, there's a field over by, go down on 183 close to Lockhart, and he said on the left-hand side, there's a field. So my student assistant, who was a first-year law student, and I said, let's go get some sunflowers, but let's go dressed to, not a suit. And how little did we know? We were wearing shorts, short-sleeve t-shirt, tennis shoes. Well, we see the field, And so I'm going to pull in, and there's a gate with a big old sign that says, "No trespassing." I looked at her and I said, "We got to do it real fast." We crawled under the fence and went and were snipping. I had a box lid, scissors, and I would just snip, and the flower would fall with the little stem into the box top. And so let's get out of here. So, but for like 400 graduates, you had to pick over 500 sunflowers because they wouldn't last, or a petal might fall off. Well, you're not going to give a pin of flower and a student with a missing petal. So we got out of there, and we also learned that you wear boots, you wear jeans, long pants, you wear a long sleeve shirt, you wear a hat. Oh my gosh, there's so many stories. Amanda, we should do a podcast just on sunflower picking.
Well, okay, so not only do we not wear dark robes, but the suits you're supposed to wear to graduation are white. So you have a white suit that then you pin a sunflower on, and it's possible that's the only day you're going to wear that white suit, because if the pollen falls, that suit is not white anymore.
That was the tradition. Yes, you wear a white suit. Now remember, initially there were probably less than 10 graduates every year. Who knows, maybe even 5, or I don't know. I don't have the numbers. But it was a white suit. And then we'd gotten away from that. And then we slowly started again. And I met with the dean, about a month ago. And he said students are still wearing white. When I graduated, I did wear a white suit, but I wore a royal blue, like your tie, blouse underneath. And it's just, and initially the flower was pinned by your best friend. And now it's pinned by an associate dean or assistant dean. TJ used to pin them, so I thought I was going to get to pin them. And Dean Udall said, "No, you're calling out the names." And it was a disappointment, but he said, "I think you can pronounce the Spanish surnames better than anybody else." And I said, "Oh, that's right. You mispronounced my name at my graduation." But anyway, he would always tease me or tell people, "Yeah, she can pronounce Garcia and Lopez and Martinez, but when she comes to Jones, she wants to say Jones." But anyway, no, it was, no, but the sunflowers are not picked anymore. They are bought from a florist, and well, that's their decision. But I like the wild sunflower because it will lie flat on the lapel. The sunflowers from a florist, they're beautiful in arrangement, but they don't lie flat on the lapel.
Is it an urban legend? My 2L year, I did not go to graduation, but I heard that the sunflowers were picked early, frozen, and then the day of the sunflower ceremony were thawing on everyone's white suits. True or false?
For your graduation?
No, for 2003.
Oh.
So when I was a 2L.
No, that was not true. That was true for 2006.
So everyone needs
which was not my ceremony. I was not there anymore.
So on the record, you never muddied up anyone's white suit.
Not that I know of. I mean, if they got that, I don't know, but I know that the sunflowers were fresh. Especially when we started having the ceremony at the Irwin Center, my gosh. At that time, the ceremony was on a Saturday. I'd pick them on Thursday. I'd take them, we'd trim them and put them in little vials, and I'd take them over, personally put them in the refrigerator at the Irwin Center. I'd go back on Friday to make sure they were still okay. Quite a few nightmares and stressing out because you know how important graduation is. And this isn't, to me, it wasn't just any graduation. This was law school graduation. The hours and the sacrifices that the graduates made to get to that point to receive the degree, which, astronomical. And I don't think anybody would say, "Oh, it was just an easy ride." And so I wanted, to me, the sunflower signified graduation, and I wanted it to be perfect. So no, if any suits were ruined, hopefully that law graduate became a very successful lawyer and could recover the cost.
Well, and I wasn't kidding when I said you were obsessed with sunflowers, because sunflower is also in the name of your scholarship for law students, the Dean Alemán Sunflower Law Horn Scholarship. Can you tell us about that scholarship and why it's important to you?
Yes. This is a joint venture between the Texas Exes and the law school. And of course, now it's called Texas Law. We always called it UT Law, but it's Texas Law. It is part of my estate planning, but the sad thing about that is that I have to die before some of that money becomes available, okay? And I'm hoping that's not for a long time. So I'm planning to need to speak to the dean about this and do some kind of fundraising so that we don't have to wait that long, and hopefully it's a long time. It's a joint effort because Texas Exes officially is not part of the university. It's an outside organization. Because of that, they can designate that the scholarship be awarded to a particular ethnicity. And I have specified Hispanics, Mexican Americans, because that's what I am. And I want to see, because you have to think back when I was in law school from 81 to 84, there weren't many of us around. And also in the faculty, staff, administration. And I want students to have role models. And I would hate for someone to say, I really wanted to go to law school, but the funds weren't there. And what it costs now to go to law school. My gosh, when I was in law school, my tuition was exactly the same as an undergraduate student paid, a graduate student. Everyone at UT had the same tuition rate. I was paying like $250 a semester. Okay? Now you can't even buy a book, I think, well, they're probably online also anyway. But it's just so expensive. And I know I've probably been criticized for this because I'm designating an ethnicity for the scholarship recipient, but until we have a level playing field, and unfortunately, I don't think it'll be in my lifetime, but I think we're getting there. As I mentioned a while, we're seeing second generation law students from minority parents. Until we get there, I don't think we need this kind of scholarship. And it's important to me because I want to see more lawyers, people of color out there. And the sunflower, because the sunflower is very meaningful to me. And Lawhorn is just a play on words. And it's been on my license plate for many years. And just by freak accident, when the co-op marketing person happened to be behind me on Dean Keaton Street and saw my license plate, and he went to the Co-op East, which was the law school bookstore, and said, I've got an idea for a t-shirt. I just saw a license plate and it said Lawhorn on it. And the clerk there said, oh, I know whose car that is. And anyway, they made t-shirts that said Lawhorn on it with the license plate. So, well, I don't know, they put the license plate, it just said Lawhorns. But I understand they're using it more now.
That's how we raise money for your scholarship, is we have Lawhorn merch that people can buy, and that could funnel into your scholarship.
That's a great idea. I like that.
Yeah, and if you find out ways that people can donate to the scholarship, we can put it in the podcast notes so that folks can donate directly to it.
Oh, we'll work on that. Yes, ma'am. Okay, I like that.
Good. It's my turn to give you assignments. So besides the university itself, what organizations have meant the most to you professionally or personally?
I was hired right after graduation. I never practiced, and I retired from the law school. So unfortunately, I cannot say bar-related professional organizations, but I'm sure that would have been very meaningful. I love seeing our graduates take leadership positions and participate in the bar activities. The associations that I was active in are more law school related. The American Association, American Law Schools, AALS, the American Bar Association has a division for law schools and a division for student affairs. um, the student division, and we also had within the what was the other one? Remember, student affairs office was also like the registrar's office, so I was involved with um, American Association Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers, ACRO, and we had a division there um, just for law school registrar type people and admissions, but I didn't always do admissions. So, but anyway, um, and then we started our own Texas division. So in the state of Texas, we'd get the Texas law schools once a year to have a meeting, a day-long meeting on topics and issues that were um, related to us. And the law schools, really, we didn't compete against each other. We just knew we had to help out each other. We'd call each other, have you ever had this situation, or what do you do? Or we had transfer students, or our students might have to, for whatever reason, family reason, they had to go to Dallas to spend the last semester, so they'd go visit over there, and then they'd get the transfer credit, and we had to certify from graduation and all that. And so we had a good relationship. So that was another organization. Personally, now most of my activities are church related. We started a prayer blanket ministry. We have a group for people over 50, and it's the Great Club, GREAT. When I say it, perhaps I don't enunciate properly, and people thought I was saying gray, like gray hair. And I said, well, that would fit too, because we're over 50 and many of us do have gray hair. What else? And the St. Al's Gals at church, which is a women ladies group at the church. Other than that, I used to be in bunco groups. I got out of that, and COVID just really affected and I am now in a Dominoes group. What else? And again, Texas Exes.
Even though you retired in 2006, it seems like you've stayed plenty busy. What advice do you have for lawyers who might want to give back?
Do it. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. I know that our law graduates, you get out, you're starting your law practice, and you have, depending what where you're working, hopefully we don't have too many sweatshop law firms anymore. But, your billable hours, what you going to do. And many, you're in your 20s, and most graduates are, and perhaps just getting married, starting a family. You have many obligations, but you know what? As my mother would always say, where there's a will, there's a way. And you can do it. Even if it's a small project, and those who have children, what better way to teach them to give back than, if you're having, like right now, big projects are backpacks, getting kids ready for school. Take your children to some of these activities and help them stuff the backpacks, and I think they might like it. But it's not just community service, social activities like that, but also pro bono work. There is so much legal assistance that is needed. And I would tell lawyers, do your part. It's to whom much is given, much is expected. And frankly, to me, it's almost a moral obligation to give back somehow, some way. Don't just look around and say, oh, well, let so-and-so do it. You do your part. Everybody can contribute in some way.
So I hope that any of our audience that are law horns are listening to this and understand you will be very disappointed in them if they are not fulfilling their moral obligation to give back.
Exactly.
What is next for you?
I've been retired for 17 years. And I had the working 6.5 years before law school, that counted towards my retirement. I chose a teacher retirement system. My predecessor, TJ, I've mentioned him several times. He retired in August, and he passed away the following March, spring break. And it's like, I don't want that to happen to me. I'm going to retire young and enjoy life. So now that the pandemic is sort of, well, it's over, right? The virus is still there, but I've gotten back into many other activities. I mean, during the pandemic, and I still haven't gotten COVID, knock on wood, right? Um, it just, you got to be careful. I have underlying conditions, so I've got to be very careful. And I don't know what's next. I mean, I want to get back very involved with the law school, with the university. And I mean, that I haven't been able to do in the past few years. So that's my main goal right now is to, I want to see that means 17 years of graduates that I don't know, who I don't know, so I've got to get back. I'll read about the super lawyers or whatever, and I always go down the list to see how many I know. And every year it's less and less because many of them are there at a young age. And it's just, I got to get back involved and meet students. So maybe you all will be in law school when I'll be mentoring.
Well, hopefully, for our audience that knew you, this was a great reminder. And for those that don't, maybe someone will reach out. So we can also put some information about how to contact you in the podcast notes as well.
Please, I'm always free for lunch.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. I think that everyone will love this discussion. And we'll see all of y'all next time. Thank you so much.
Welcome.